This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. Today is Thursday, the 10th of July, and we're here to talk about recent events at Ottawa City Hall. With me, I am joined by Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Welcome to you both.
Hello again.
Hello. Good to be back in studio again.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, nice to see you guys in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's always fun to do this in studio. Now we're getting deep in summer. City Council is starting to wind down a little bit. What is our schedule going to look like over the next little bit?
Excellent question.
Let's try to figure it out right now. No, I think we've been talking about a park pod, right, guys? So I think we're looking. I know we're checking our calendars to figure out when we can go into a park, probably with a shelter, in case it starts raining.
Maybe August.
Maybe August. I think that might be a good time. Then we kind of preview what's happened and what's coming. What will be a big year in city politics in Ontario, but certainly in the city of Ottawa.
And speaking of winding down, like the city actually, or I guess the mayor's office with the clerk's office canceled the meeting that was supposed to be yesterday, and now it's on the 23rd, which is a little bit late for the last meeting of the year.
Yeah, and so presumably that's going to happen, right? The 23rd of July, there will be the final.
I think half of council will not actually be there in person. I've heard from a lot of people who will be like, well, I'll be, I'm hoping my Wi-Fi at the cottage is working that day.
Check their backgrounds on that Zoom call. Yeah. But it is, July 23rd is a late, they're working a lot longer in the summer.
Or not working. They're not having a meeting this week. So it depends how you want to look at it, actually.
Okay. Well, listen, at that meeting, one of the issues that they will be considering is the Transportation Master Plan.
Big issue.
Yes. And so that was considered at committee in late June. And we're actually going to talk about it now. There's a lot to dig into. We were hoping that it was going to be approved at council yesterday, but that, of course, didn't happen.
And that's probably is going to be approved. I don't think there's going to be huge changes to it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
okay.
I haven't heard a lot, actually, debate over it even, to be honest with you, outside of City Hall.
So maybe I'll just set the stage for this Transportation Master Plan. So if we remember, this is what's called Phase 2. And Phase 2 identifies what are the projects that the city wants to implement. And it's got both what they call a needs-based network and then a priority network. And the needs-based network is what we need to do, which costs, about $7.5 billion. And this is over the next 21 years.
And it does not, as you know, include LRT3.
Does not, which is another $8 billion, but that's,
yeah, we're really going to do that, but okay. Yeah.
Okay, so $7.5 billion for this dream network. But what they've also identified is a priority network, which is $4.25 billion over the next 21 years. So maybe just to get us started, Joanne, can you help us explain the finances here? Like, is this, so if we think about $4 billion, $4.25 billion over 21 years, that's what, about $200 million a year? Mm-hmm. So that, like, is this coming out of taxes? Like, where's this money coming from?
So it comes from different things, right? Some of it comes from taxes. Some of it, if it's like brand new roads and brand new transit, will come from, for example, development charges, which we talk about on this show all the time, which are the fees that developers pay, and then they pass them on to brand new home buyers to pay for things in new areas of the town. We're extending services like roads and water and transit service, for example. Some of it will come from other levels of government. So, we are always applying for funding for things, right? So LRT is, an excellent example of that. But even like the e-buses we have, right? That's part of, we got money from the federal government for that. So one of the things, though, is it's always a little bit unclear. Like, first of all, the needs-based network, kind of almost forget about that. Like we are going to, basically, if you want your project done in the next 20 years, you better be on that priority network, right? Now, it is true. Things change sometimes. 20 years, you can swap things out, right? You can, we move something on the priority network, but something's got to come off, right? And so we're not doing that whole needs-based, everything on that list is very unlikely to get built, I hate to say. But the priority one is a bit more likely. On transit, what we find is the folks who are planning the capital part of this, they are just assuming the operational system that we have today. They're not, they're not assuming that we're going to run the buses more often or anything like that. This is what they're assuming. And that we pay for it through taxes, some funding, and some fares. On the road side, we are going to be getting an update on how that's going to work and where we're going to get the money from taxes on that at the much waited for long-term financial plan that comes in September. So we're going to get more about how, what is our taxes going to look like if we want to actually build $2.8 billion of roads.
Yeah. And that's a good point, that this is a capital budget about the transportation investments we need across the entire network, right? Whether it's for driving, whether it's for buses, whether it's for cycling.
Oh, and I apologize. I gave the wrong number. That was the needs base. So just to be clear, on the priority networks, it's $2.3 billion in transit that we want to spend over the next 20 years and $1.6 billion on roads. I also want to say that for the active transportation, it's just $350 million, which doesn't that seem low for $20 million? But for 20 years. One thing, though, is like these are standalone projects. So I'm not sure if there are more active like more bike lanes, more sidewalks as part of other projects.
Yeah, in fact, there are. And so maybe, John, that was actually one of the big debates that took place at committee, and particularly raised by a number of the delegations, was this idea of mode share, right?
Mode share, yeah.
And so, so can you tell us what the TMP, what this Transportation Master Plan says about mode share, and how does that compare to what the official plan had set out for us?
Well, the official plan says 50%, right, of trips made by sustainable choices.
And sustainable meaning?
Public transit, bike, walking, but I think also taxi is put in there.
And also being a passenger in a car.
Being a passenger in a car.
Yeah.
So if you're the driver, you're not counted, but if you are the actual passenger, you are counted.
Okay.
As
Carpooling.
Carpooling.
Yes.
Okay, so TMP had a goal of 50%, you said.
50%?
By 2046, right?
2046. And we should say now, according to the city's data, our mode share for sustainable choices right now is about 43%. So we're talking about a 7 percentage point increase that they're hoping for. But the official plan is actually 50%, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's
that
right.
it's calling for. So why the delta? Why the 2 percentage point delta there? And I think what the OP is saying is like here, they're thinking about the needs-based projects in their calculation, where the TMP is.
You think that's the
I
difference?
think that, and I think the TMP is looking more at the priority.
So if we build
network.
these priorities, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah. That's where I think the delta is.
So let's just recap that. Right now we're at 43% sustainable.
43.
The official plan says 50.
By 2046, that's like 11 years from now.
And the TMP says we're only going to do 48.
Yeah.
48.
Okay. So, but John, I think the explanation is you're probably right that if you did the needs based, we would do it. But considering we've only got priority projects. But here's the question that a couple of councillors raised, or actually one. I think it was only one. Like Glenn Gower raised this. He said, "Well, shouldn't we be prioritizing the projects that get us to our official plan targets?" So, Joanne,
yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, the staff also said things like, "Well, if you actually put more money into the sustainable ones, that will boost it. If you have ways." And some of it's lifestyle choices, but I mean, we were talking about e-bikes here beforehand. I'm going to try one this summer. That's on my to-do list, up with jumping into Dow's Lake, also riding an e-bike. But, how come in the Transportation Master Plan, we don't have a city-run bike share program, a city-run car share program, right? Like we keep thinking that things are going to just be privately owned and people are going to make, money off that. But I mean, these are the things that will bring that on more. But, part of it is we do need some roads. Green Bank is a disaster, right? Like they've been wanting to straighten that for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and I do actually think it needs doing. And also they're going to put transit on that as well, though, at the same time. So, I think when the official plan was planned, like maybe our transit plan was different, right? Like we are running less frequently now. The LRT runs less frequently. The bus service, it's not optimization, but the new network, right? Some people argue there's less service there. So maybe when they redid the calculations based on current operations, you're gonna have, there's less people who are going to be able to take transit, and also I still think that 350 million is a bit low on if you want to get people out to get around other places, you got to give them the infrastructure that makes that easy and safe.
Yeah, what do you think, John? You look a bit skeptical.
Well, I think where you get people, where you increase that modal share, if we're going to talk about the modal share for sustainable options, it's in public transit.
Yeah.
I mean, the bike project, yes, and walking, yes, of course. But where you make the biggest hit is in public transit. So that's where I think if you want to make a big difference and get people moving in a more sustainable way, I think public transit is where you look and make those investments.
Yeah, fair enough. John, I want to ask you about one of the really contentious issues throughout this whole process, has been around the widening of the airport parkway.
Oh my gosh, yes, years long.
Yeah,
this discussion, right?
And we always assume this was about making it easier for people to get out to the airport, right?
Well, the airport would say
Not
that.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Okay.
But what was really interesting was that during the staff presentation, they said, look, we need to widen the airport parkway because we anticipate the number is 60,000 new residents in Southeast Ottawa. Now, Southeast Ottawa is where we're talking about this new Taywin project. So what my interpretation is that, and I guess Finley Creek, rather. So you think about Finley Creek all the way out to Taywin, 60,000 new residents out there. That's why we need to expand the airport parkway. The problem that I have with this is that we're talking about lands that there's a little bit that's within the urban boundary right now, but there's other bits which aren't even in the urban boundary. Like Taywin, we're talking about 7,000 homes that are in the urban boundary right now. We're talking about an ultimate Taywin that could be 40,000 homes, 50,000 homes. So are we actually building a network based upon like something's not lining up here? Like shouldn't we be building the network based upon where we're allowed to build right now, as opposed to where someone might be able to build in the future?
Well, number one, I'll back up a bit and say the widening of the airport parkway has been like on the table for years.
I would like to say I looked this up. The environmental assessment for the widening was passed in 2016. So this is not a new discussion.
Yeah, and the discussion it came before that, right? And so like this would be way pre Taywin, I think. And council has debated whether to do the widening or do the multi-use pathway separately, and then worry about the widening later because they're waiting for the Trillium line, the expanded Trillium line to open. And here we are, so we have a little bit more data now. And so to your question, like I guess the question is, should we be widening the parkway, right? When we have the O train, the Trillium line. And this has been part of the debate for years.
Yeah.
And those who would be supporting the parkway expansion would say, you know what, of course, it's great to have the Trillium line, but we actually need both. I've heard this debate. Steve DeRoche, I know the councillor for the South End communities, has talked about this. Yes, the Trillium line, of course, is going to move people, hopefully, more people downtown, back and forth between the southern suburbs. But the road needs to be widened because people are going to drive too. And that's the discussion. Now, we can talk about induced demand. When you put more lanes on a road, research has shown that people love to fill up the lanes. If they build it, they will come. And that applies to lanes too.
John, can you tell that to Councillor Tim Tierney, please? We'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But like, there's a short-term, I think research has shown there's a short-term benefit. You get it, bam, you get to see of course.
But it usually runs out in 6 months.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's 6 months, but certainly in the long term, you have more cars obviously coming to those lanes, and we can talk about air pollution and what the environmental effects are.
But I do want to just push back a little on that it's Taywin. Sure, if Taywin is in it, maybe there'll be homes there someday. I'm skeptical, but there might be. But Riverside South, there's a lot of growth. Leitrim, there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of development that's been in the book since Taywin that's putting on that is pushing the demand for this road. I would also say, in staff's defense, although they don't need me to defend them, if Taywin got put in the official plan, something I am against, then they have to plan for that, right? If there are going to be homes, they have to plan for that. What I don't get, though, and I've never understood this argument, is if we're going to widen the airport parkway between Brookfield and Hunt Club, what happens in the northern part? Like, it's going to be funneled back in.
Whoa.
Like, that's like in the downtown. Now, I just want to throw in the city's data on the origin study that was done, unfortunately, at the end of the pandemic in 2022. I actually think it should be redone because I think things were changing. People are traveling more within their areas, right? So to speak to Glenn Gower was talking about this. He found there's more trips like within Stittsville. There's more trips within Riverside South, right? So maybe not all the trips are to downtown and back, but still, you're widening it, then you get into this like 2-lane Bronson, and like, what is going to happen there?
Well, John, what did staff say about that? Like, they're saying that we're going to widen the airport parkway. Yeah. And what did they say about traffic north on Bronson, north of the canal on Bronson?
No downstream impact. Right?
How is that possible?
so that's for the lay person, it's like it's not going to be impacted. Like the traffic is going to work itself out. And so the rationale is, I think, is the city saying, you know what, as cars are going north down the airport parkway, it transitions into Bronson. motorists are going to make a decision. Some are going to be going, many, perhaps are going to go to Carleton University. That's a major workplace. Others are going to go down Queen Elizabeth to go into the downtown that way. And people are going to find different Sunnyside, right? Maybe once you get that way.
Well, they can do that now.
But I think that's what the rationale is. I'm super skeptical, like you guys, I think.
I'd like to see the data.
I drove Airport Park. Usually I don't drive Airport Parkway, Bronson, but I had to go do a couple errands around the city over the past week, and I got to experience that. And boy, I got to tell you, we probably all have our least favorite roads in the city. Mine is like Maryvale, and I got to tell you, the other one is north of the canal, Bronson, because it is just such like sucking like a tough milkshake through a straw. Getting cars through there, and there's such like a backup.
It's giving you a big headache driving on.
I know.
Yeah, like
the funny thing about induced demand is, okay, so maybe there's going to be more cars in the future. Hopefully not. Maybe the city's going to be correct, no downstream effect. But maybe there's going to be such a traffic jam that people are going to want to take the O train instead. And actually, it comes full circle. And public transit, people are going to look at that. Hopefully, it'll get them more quicker downtown, I guess.
And I mean, also, as I say, the EA has been on the books for 9 years. So, I mean, things are on the list, but do they get built? Well, that's another question.
Joanne, I want to ask you about a project that's been on the books even longer, and that is the Alta Vista Transportation Corridor.
I believe from 1974.
Wow,
or
really?
possibly
74?
79. Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
so what is this project and what's happened with it?
Okay, so the Alta Vista Corridor, if people have gone, my apologies, if you've had to go to the hospital, but we've all had to go to the hospital, whether it's the general, CHIO, that hospital pod. It would be a corridor that from the hospital campus, northbound goes to Nicholas and the 417. So it gets you onto the 417 that way. And southbound, it goes through a corridor that the city has put aside. People want to call it parkland. It's not technically parkland. It's green space that they've saved for a road. Although there's lots of room there still to put a road or transit and some other gardens that are there. So what they finally decided after many, many years, by the way, we collect development charges for this. So if you're a brand new home buyer, you have paid a few bucks for this that is never going to be built and never was going to be built ever. So the northern part, so the part from the hospital to the Nicholas ramp at 417, that's canceled. And it's interesting because what they've said was like, oh, well, Nicholas is so busy there that you can't funnel the traffic onto the 417 anyway, which is interesting that they use the, in this case, that there's too much traffic and the funneling will not work. But on Bronson, it will work fine. Yeah. The southern part is still on the books. The idea being that it's going to take people who are going to the hospital from Walkley. It goes south to Walkley. It'll keep people out of the neighborhoods of Alta Vista, and it'll be a more direct route into the hospital campus. I don't think there's many people who think that's going to be built either, but still on the books. So half of the Alta Vista corridor are gone, but the people of like Old Ottawa East and the Glebe, they're all happy.
Yeah,
kind of went through that area. Yeah.
And that again, when we talk about road controversies, that's been at the top of the list too, probably top 2.
Also, they did build a little part of it, the hospital loop in 2018. I don't know how much that's used. I'd like to see the data.
Very
on that.
little.
Yeah, so that was cautionary tale on putting like money into projects that are just on paper, like, oh, we're supposed to do this. Well,
okay, so the south half of the Alta Vista Transportation
technically still on,
still there, but probably never going to happen.
But we still collect money for it.
Okay. So, John, let's turn to the final issue I want to cover under Transportation Master Plan is coming back to Councillor Tierney. And I'm not sure where this came from, but
nowhere. Out of the blue it came.
Councillor Tierney's proposing that we do not go ahead. Well, the federal government does not go ahead with its proposal for a bridge over Kettle Island in the east of the city, and instead think about using that money to build a ring road to the south.
Even Larry O'Brien.
Well, even though ring roads are also provincial responsibility, right? But
so, what do we make of this? So the question is this just politics by Councillor Tierney and some other East End councillors, I think, too? It's super controversial. Talking about transportation infrastructure projects that are super controversial in the region. That's a big one for those East End communities. The ring road, I still don't understand how that would work if we're worried about making sure interprovincial truck transportation, especially, doesn't move through the downtown core. And that's partially what's a big part of what the interprovincial bridge is all about,
Yes.
like making sure that trucks aren't going through, snaking through Sandy Hill, King Edward, and out into Quebec. So I don't know where the crossing would be under this ring road idea. But the ring road, again, as Joanne has alluded to, it's not new. It goes back, now 15 years, probably longer than that, but more in more recent years.
The last time is like Larry O'Brien ran on when he was trying to run for re-election in 2010.
Yeah.
He's like, the ring road, bring up the ring road.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it should be noted, right? It's controversial even at the federal government level inside the government, because we know Liberal MP Mona Fortier is speaking out against the Kettle Island
bridge, yeah.
right? The bridge.
But Steve McKinnon wants the bridge.
McKinnon wants it. So there's some
Yeah.
interesting in-caucus maybe fighting to happen there.
And at the local level, most of the local East End councillors in fact, they're all opposed to it, right?
I can't,
I think-
I don't know 100%. I know some have spoken out against it, but traditionally it has been very controversial for the East
But not
End.
for the Vanier councillors because
Oh.
King Edward is packed with trucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And comes through downtown.
Yeah, that's the one exception. Even Ralston King is, I believe, opposed to the bridge
And I'll say this too,
in Rio Rockcliffe.
in a bit
Yeah.
of defense for Councillor Tierney, like the province has at a very high level in a report it did about Eastern Ontario transportation. I think it's like 3 years old now. The report did talk about the idea of a ring road in the Ottawa area through the lens of the interprovincial truck traffic, interprovincial travel. And so, I think Councillor Tierney did point to that as well, saying, look, the province has also talked about
But that's to get traffic off of the 417 because they want to put more capacity on the 400 series highways. It's not going to do anything to deal with the trucks in the downtown core trying to get on the 50.
Yeah, and I still that's the head scratcher for me. And the last thing I would say is when you talk about building a ring road to divert traffic, you're diverting traffic from community to another community too, right? So another community would be impacted. And so if I may be a South End councillor, I'm like, ooh, wait a second, you want to run trucks through my community? Hold on there. And I know
Rural
that's been an
areas,
issue in the rural areas, right? Traffic and certainly heavy traffic too.
And I'm going to predict today the fact that Council Tierney's motion does not pass at council.
Oh, okay.
I think.
It passed pretty well at committee, right?
It was 5 hours, and everyone's like, whatever. Because, it's also one of those motions that's like, it doesn't do anything. You're like, we're going to ask these people to do this. And you're like, also, you can't ask the federal government to not spend money on a thing that is their prerogative and spend it on a thing that's the provincial responsibility. That's not happening. So we'll see if that actually passes, because this council also promised not to just keep making requests that are useless. Like, that's one of the things they said they would do. Like, let's not pass a million motions that are just foolish.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens, but I think it's not going to pass.
Can I ask what's your thought on a new provincial interprovincial crossing?
I am so torn. Number one, I live right by the Champlain Park Bridge, which is crazy. And there's always people who are claiming that if you open one, it's going to take some traffic off. But I tell my own neighbors, I'm like, I don't see how a bridge at Kettle Island is going to take traffic off Champlain Park on the other end of town. People are obviously going to the western part of town. I do think that the trucks going through downtown are a problem. And I don't know if the bridge is the best thing, the best way to do it. The actual Kettle Island path does seem the best. I know that's a problem at Kettle Island. I would actually like to see that. I just thought of this last night. I don't know if this is doable, but I would like to see that as a toll bridge, and also to ban trucks on all the other bridges.
Yeah.
So the idea is like, okay, if we're going to build this, and what we really are saying is we're going to take trucks out of the downtown, like Champlain Park, you're not allowed to like the Champlain Bridge, you're not allowed to have a truck, right?
Yeah.
So ban them on the other bridges. They all have to use that bridge, and we toll it so that, we could pay for it, and it doesn't just encourage more people to drive across. I know it's not ideal, and environmentally and all of that, I'm not for it, but I do think there is a truck problem in the downtown.
There's no elegant solution, is there?
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about truck tunnel, which was an idea that came up some years ago
I kind
too.
of liked that idea, but it also, to get to the tunnel, came out. The good part about this route that they've chosen is you're coming right off the 417. You're going through already onto the airport parkway, which is already a parkway. And you're getting
aviation
I apologize.
Yeah.
You're getting onto the aviation parkway, which is already there. Just what gets widened, and you're going onto a new bridge. So it actually is the least
least
disruptive,
impactful,
I think.
for sure. And there's a key point though, is that if I agree that a major objective here should be getting trucks out of downtown. That's really critical, and I'm very sympathetic to everything that Councillor Plante has had to deal with on this front. One thing that we need that we have to be super careful about is that if we do build that new bridge, that we actually go ahead and restrict trucks from using the existing ones, and that's by no means a done deal. In fact, right now, if anything, the default is that we will leave trucking routes as they are. I think the trucking industry is probably saying, you know what, if we're coming from the west end and have to go all the way out to the east end, it's just going to go
back. Yeah,
like they will object to this.
But Hill Island is not that east.
No, I
King
agree.
Edward.
But the city needs to push back here, and the city has been kind of wavering on what are acceptable truck routes, and not being quite taking as hard line on it as they used to.
I agree.
So we'd have to get that right. Otherwise,
what's the point then?
What about the McDonald-Cartier Bridge? Like, why are there trucks not on that? Do they use that?
No, there are trucks on that.
Yeah, as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the main one, right?
No, King Edward is the main one.
That's the same thing.
Oh, is that the same way? Okay, well, just ignore all that, everyone. Okay. See, I'm always calling things by names. I'm the worst of knowing the.
Well, I mean, wait. Just kind of chuckling, thinking about Aviation Park. We have a parkway named Aviation, a parkway named Airport. How much does that screw people up coming into the city, or just like Ottawa residents?
Or if you've lived here for 30 years, also screws you up, apparently. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we have said everything that needs to be said on the Transportation Master Plan.
Oh, yeah,
we're done.
right.
Done.
Well, so it's going to go to council, as we said, on the 23rd of July, probably, we hope. So we'll see what happens there. But I think you're right that probably not going to see a lot of changes, but we will definitely be keeping an eye on Councillor Tierney's motion and for a ring road and whether council approves that in principle or not. Okay. Yep. Let's move on to our second topic, which is around the fees for urban boundary review. So we remember that there's a
very accessible subject.
Okay. So listen, why don't I take a shot at just explaining this?
Go.
It used to be the case that we have this urban boundary, right? We have this urban boundary where developers are allowed to build subdivisions. Outside the urban boundary, they're not. They're farmers' fields and they have to stay that way. So what happens is, as the city grows, we need to increase that urban boundary. In the past, that review of urban boundary expansion has happened every 5 to 10 years. And it's been based on city analysis that looks at all the different parcels of land and ranks them and says, this is the best. We'd recommend going with this one, but not this one. And that's been the process in the past. There was a provincial policy statement that came out this year that changed that last year. Last year. Yeah, last year. That allowed any developer that said, I want to include a piece of land in the urban boundary to go and apply directly to the city to have that expansion done.
Anytime.
Yeah. No. So like a bit of a free for all in a sense, right? However, the provincial planning policy statement also said, okay, city, you need to figure out a policy and a process. Yeah, you need to figure out the process for how developers do this. So they came up with a process, and John, CBC's reported on this, and can you just fill us in on what they found? Yeah,
so the broad strokes, this is CBC reporter Kate Porter's story. Great story. Talked about there's a dispute between some home builders, I think 5 home builders, who essentially appealed the fee the city wanted to charge.
And how much did they want to charge?
$1.8 million.
They paid the fee because they wanted to get their applications in, but they paid it, quote, under protest.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they retroactively appealed it to say, this is crazy.
Yeah, so the appeal board is the Ottawa Land Tribunal in Ontario, and developers have the right to appeal, and saying it was way too much money. And so instead of it actually being tested in front of the chair of the OLT of this hearing, the city cut a deal with the developers and ended up, they settled on, by the sounds of it, 1/6 of that for the home builders to pay. And I think there was another appeal too by
1/6.
1/6 of the $1.8 million.
So like around $300 million.
Okay, 300,000.
Oh, that's sure.
Yeah.
One day I'm going to get all the names and numbers right on this podcast. Yeah.
So back up a bit. City charged a lot of money. Home builders said, whoa, that's way too much money for what needs to be done here. Home builders appeal. City, has a discussion with the home builders. Said, okay, how about this? Home builders say, we'll take that, strike a deal. No, that's made public through the council, right, reporting out process. Although I think there was an in-camera meeting, or legal matters are usually talked about behind closed doors, not involving the public. So the question then becomes, well, didn't the city just lower their fees then? If something like this, they actually admit to them being too high because they cut a deal with home builders. And according to the CBC reporting, no, they have not lowered the fees. They're going to keep the fees what they are, which to my mind opens them up to more appeals. And so who knows where that ends.
Okay. So Joanne, like what's going on here? Like, first of all, did we hear about this through any way other than the CBC story?
So first of all, I have a disclosure on this story, and that is the firm where I'm a senior consultant, Strategy Corp, does actual work. One of their clients is one of the landowner groups that appealed for one of these applications. So I know lots about this, and just for the record, I am in favor of these folks trying to get in to the urban boundary. They scored second highest of all of the land that was supposed to be let in, and they got thrown out when Taywin got let in, and I'm against Taywin. However, I didn't lobby for them or anything. I write background briefs, and when people say, "Do you know anything about this policy?" I say, "Sure, let me write you a note." so I do that kind of work, but still, I just wanted to be transparent on that.
Okay.
And so your question is, what do we know about this? So I knew a little bit about it. I know that Kate Porter and before her, Elise Scora, great reporters at CBC, they were following these appeals, and they said, what happened to the fee appeal? Okay. And following it through, I believe that it was not the city that told them what happened. It wasn't until they found out from other sources.
Well, they were reporters doing reporting.
They're doing reporting, but I am kind of appalled at the city's lack of transparency and council's. Council goes in camera an enormous amount. And I'm going to tell you that I'm starting to count up the amounts. It is far, far more than all the 12 years that we covered Jim Watson. Really? It is. And I'm actually literally adding them up now over the next little while. Part of it is they're getting LRT updates to keep them in. So they're not sharing those things on WhatsApp. But on the other hand, they're not reporting out. And so in this case, as far as we know, on the public record, this application process was approved by council. So the public record says that this fee is $1.8 million. Nowhere in the public has it said we have settled and what that fee was.
Yeah, we gave them a discount.
We gave them, the discount was $1.5 million. We should have $4 or $5 million more dollars in our coffers based on what we know of public policy. And it is not okay for them to not report that out. Now, maybe it's going to come out in some annual report somewhere,
legal services.
The legal services
well,
in there somewhere,
right?
Buried somewhere. But why is there not a reason to tell people? I don't think people realize that the city is taken to the OLT many times, and we lose all the time. And this question is well, that's just I know that there's people roll their eyes at the OLT, which is the replacement for the old Ontario Municipal Board. And people think that they're, in cahoots with development or whatever. But I do think, though, that it speaks to lack of leadership at planning department. 3 years without a general manager until recently. And you're you might not like the rules that you've been given. I want to say the new provincial planning statement that says you can apply anytime for application. That's not good public policy. But
terrible public policy.
Yeah, but it's a public policy that you have been handed, city. And so don't make up a process that ignores that it exists.
Right.
Because we're going to lose. And when then the development industry says, oh, the municipality is giving us red tape and delays and they're costing us extra money, they have this to point to as an example. I don't think that's always the case, just to say. But in this case, I don't know what they were doing. Because they knew they were going to lose. Everybody knew they were going to lose. Everyone.
On the transparency front, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's a shame because of what the answer would be is it's a legal discussion, it's a legal settlement. Those things are usually under wraps and not reported to anyone, not even through those legal services report. It will say that maybe something was settled, but you never find out how much money was paid. And not just through discussions with developers over on Ontario Land Tribunal stuff, but court action, right? And so often things don't actually end up in court.
We pay that money.
We pay the money, but the taxpayer never finds out how much money is paid out to settle claims or appeals. And so that's a greater shame. But I think in this case, because as you rightly pointed out, Joanne, council approved a process with a fee structure. And now here's an example of that fee structure being thrown out the window. Developers given a bit of a big discount. And so I think the taxpayer should know about that.
But there's two issues here, right? We've talked about transparency and the lack, the excess of secrecy. And you know what? What I've observed with this council and this, they just can't, everything has to be good news, right? Like they just can't admit to making a mistake, which this looks like a mistake to me.
Or proactively telling us about stuff.
Yeah. And so that if something unfortunate like that happens, they just want to ignore it, just want to bury it. And, they could come back and say, you know what? We actually have gone through this process. When we came up with that $1.8 million number, that's what we thought was our best estimate. Now that we've gone through the motions a couple of times,
fair.
We realize it's a fraction of that, and come out and be
and maybe it'll be different
for
for different applications, right?
Yeah.
Like some applications will be more complicated than others. Like, but why can they not tell us that?
But I would say, like, why aren't staff pushing, like, for the transparency? You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, that's...
No, staff were trying to hide it even more than that.
Well, that's
and council's letting them.
Yeah. And so why not? I mean, you take what, a day of, like, a day story?
2 people were writing about this issue. Like barely never knew about it. So
yeah. Is it giving potential politicians ammo come 2026, to fight the incumbent?
Talk about the application fee dispute. Yeah, that's really
Sometimes there's so much work being put into, as you say, Neil, like watching out for bad news that you just ignore it and move on to something else and change the channel immediately, rather than just being transparent and helping the taxpayer understand how the city government works.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I guess there's really no quick and easy answer to that. Like being, this is about a culture shift, right? A more transparent and open city hall that wants to actually tell its residents
I want to say
on.
right now, because I am always accused of never saying nice about anything about Jim Watson, but the Jim Watson era was actually more transparent than this council, I think. Well, you were there. What do you think?
I mean, now you've been watching City Hall a lot more closely than I have when it comes to the in-camera stuff, so I don't know, but hearing you say that's really interesting.
Do you know anything about the LRT disputes going on with RTG?
No,
there's hundreds of millions of dollars in dispute. I think most people think that's settled. What are they talking about? What is the subject of that?
What's with the rails and the curves of the rails right now and everything that was happening with the trains? And I have no idea. Yeah.
I have questions.
Okay, let's move on to the lightning round. There's just one problem. I didn't bring my bell.
Oh no, doesn't count.
Henry, post-production, could you put in a ding for us, right? Okay. Let's jump to the lightning round, and we're going to start with you, Joanne.
Okay.
Municipal Accountability Act. So, in fact, I saw you even had an editorial in the Ottawa Citizen about this a few days ago, and we discussed this at one of our previous recordings, that the Municipal Accountability Act, which is really how do councils deal with problematic councillors like Rick Shirelli, and how do they hold them account for their inappropriate actions? That the province has a bill to address this. It's coming to Ottawa to have public hearings by the committee. It's coming on July 17th. This is something that you've been very involved with for a long time. I presume that you will be presenting at committee. Can you give us a sneak preview as to what you want to say?
So I signed up to committee, and I've been confirmed that I'm going to have it on. Unfortunately, I don't have the details yet of where it's going to be, but it will be recorded. So it will be online and open to the public, and I'll certainly send that out on social media, and maybe you can help me with that at Better Ottawa, Neil. My op-ed will give a little bit of a sneak preview of that, right? I think the biggest problem with this is after the local integrity commissioner does an investigation and finds that there's such serious contraventions of the code of conduct and harmed people that they're going to recommend that council member be removed. It goes to the provincial integrity commissioner that then does their own investigation, so very time consuming. And then it goes back to council, and council has to vote unanimously to get rid of that person. And by unanimous, it means you're not allowed to be away. So if someone's homesick without permission, if somebody gets up to go to the bathroom, that vote doesn't count. If the vote is not done within the 30-day timeline that's written in the bill, it's unclear what happens there. So basically, no one's ever going to get thrown out, because you can always find some friend on council that's going to not even vote for you, but go away, disappear.
Joanne, we're in the lightning round, but I want to ask a thunder round question, which is the follow-up, right? The 10, when you wait 10 seconds later in the thunder.
You bring your bell if you want it to be a real lightning bell.
But okay, so you point out that the process right now that's being proposed is there's a problematic councillor, a local integrity commissioner investigates and makes a recommendation that something should happen with that. Then it goes to a provincial integrity commissioner, who then reviews and says, yes, something has to take place here. Then it goes back to the city council. And as you say, unless it's a unanimous vote with everyone there, nothing changes.
Yeah. And so I'm going to argue that's extremely inappropriate. I don't think it should be a council. You're going to ask something?
Well, what's the alternative?
A judge. Right. And so I say have a local integrity commissioner recommend it. Maybe kick it up to the provincial integrity commissioner, perhaps not to have like a what they call de novo investigation, but like review it and say, yeah, okay, I agree. Then you put it to a judge. A judge does not know these people. They are perfectly positioned to understand whether this behavior violates public trust and all the things, right? Like, as I said, this is the best line in my op-ed. So you don't have to read it. But basically, like when we say that you get judged by a jury of your peers, they don't mean your peers that are sitting next to you, right? Like if you actually knew the person being accused of something, you get thrown off the jury. They don't say, oh, let's have a jury of everybody you work with. Like that's ridiculous. That is not the way justice works. And it's a very bad process. So I'll be arguing that.
Okay.
Should be just quickly. Do you think it should be a judge under your recommendation from outside our jurisdiction?
Possibly, like judicial review. And I'm gonna talk about something a lot of people don't remember, and that is the judicial review of Rick Shirelli's complaint about how he was treated. Only John will remember this because the two of us covered it during the pandemic. And I was hoping to argue that like it shows perfectly how that works because actually he found in Rick Shirelli's case because the panel of judges, the three of them are neutral people. They don't know all of these people. They're not here. So absolutely, I think outside of the municipality, even better.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Two last quick points on this before we turn to you, John. That is number one. We should say that there have been some early consultations that have taken place in, I guess, maybe say the GTA.
In London, I think.
In London, okay. And those have, I think, have also pointed to some of the weaknesses in the process. But number two is if you could let us know if we find out where it's taking place.
Oh, I will definitely. I will be finding that out, and it's going to be open to the public. I know some reporters are going to come, and it'll also be online. So I'll send that information out.
And I will help blast it.
Thank you.
Okay, so John, on to you.
Yes.
This week, the city opened a new transitional housing facility at 180 Queen Street. So this is a 140-bed facility, and it's designed to accommodate newcomers to Canada, i.e. asylum seekers. Now, and it also provides the wraparound supports that those asylum seekers would need to have a successful start to their experience in Canada. So my question to you,
I think I know what's coming.
Is this not just a better version of these sprung structures that we spent so much time agonizing over?
It seems, and I don't know why. Like this was this is news to me this past week. Why was the city holding that card to their chest? Like, I don't understand. So in retrospect, it seemed like the sprung structure idea was a panic move. Like, oh my God, the city realized they needed to do something. As it turns out, they didn't need to panic, according to them. And they had this other project that they were pursuing downtown. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure why they didn't explain this was happening behind the scenes. Do you guys have any thoughts about why that might have happened?
You know what? They actually had two projects, right? They had this one, 180 Queen Street, but they also had this convent out in Orleans on Saint Joseph Boulevard.
But they did actually say that they bought that one, right? Like that had a little bit more publicity around it. Like I get that when you're buying the building, you want to be in camera until it's done because you don't want to be,
No, but both of these buildings, to John's point, like these are facilities that could be used for what the sprung structures were going to do, right? So why we were going forward with this sprung proposal, it just makes no sense anymore.
And if you're a councillor who's had to shoulder these divisions in your community over the sprungs, are you kind of like now, well, wait a second, like where did this project come from downtown? Why didn't we talk about this or have a little bit of discussion? And then, I mean, it's good news, right? I think it seems like to be good news for the city. I mean, it's a centralized location.
It's better than sprung.
Yeah.
But when we say transitional housing, what does housing mean? Is this not really basically an emergency shelter that is nicer looking? There's nothing wrong with it being nicer looking. That part's good. But the emergency shelter part seems short-term, very short-term thinking.
Yeah, it's going to be all about the next step for those people who are going to be staying there. What the path out of that building onto something else.
Yeah, that's right.
Integrate into society.
That's right. And it's, I spent a lot of time looking at the issue of how we manage the asylum seekers. Because it makes up about half of our homeless population in Ottawa. I don't think people realize that. Like the composition of homelessness in Ottawa has really changed a lot over the last couple of years. And there are extremely good community-based solutions that have been working for a very long time. Solutions like these, what are sometimes called scattered sites or communal homes that are run by organizations like Stepstone or Matthew House. Others that have been run on a shoestring, where they say, genuine community responses that say, we recognize the need here. These people are coming into our city that need to be supported in the short term. And so they say, we'll do it we'll take a house in the neighborhood, in any neighborhood. We will make it provide people with what they need to be successful. But it's, you're there for 3 months or maybe 6 months, but that's it. Then you've got to be on your own 2 feet. And what I worry about with this facility on Queen Street is I think it's probably like a 3-month stay. But then where do these people go afterwards, right? And that's where I worry that they might end up moving from Queen Street out to this new facility on San Joseph Boulevard, the convent. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to just are we helping asylum seekers become successful and integrated into Canadian society as quickly as possible?
And to be determined.
To be determined. Yeah. Okay. That is it for this week.
It was great seeing you guys.
It certainly was. It was fun to be back in person.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Okay. So thank you everyone for being with us today. Our schedule's a little bit uncertain over the next few weeks, but we'll be, whenever council comes back with substantive work, we will be there to cover it. And in the meantime, enjoy your summer, and we will be talking to you soon. Thank you, everyone.